This is Rats, High Tea at Sea, a roll and write game for 2 to 6 players. Collectively, you are rats aboard a sinking ship having an absolutely fantastic party. And before that ship sinks, it's deeply important that you prove to all of the other rats that you are the most fabulous rats aboard. Now, there's a couple of things you need to know about this game. First of all, this is not a review. No. We actually kind of worked on this game with the designers, and I'm here to tell you about it and explain how to play it, but then afterwards, what you do is up to you. And the second thing I need to tell you about this is this box isn't real. It doesn't actually have a box. It's not a physical thing. It's a print and play. And the last thing I need to tell you is that if you want to play this, you can play it right now for absolutely no monies, free, gratis. We worked together with the designers of this game, which we thought was something really, really special from when we first set eyes on it. We got an illustrator involved and we collaborated to produce something that might provide a bit of brightness to people in an otherwise quite difficult year. It's a game that has been specifically designed to be playable over Zoom or whatever you want to use to hang out with people online, but also plays very well physically with other people. We wanted to make something that had a focus on sustainability, hence it being something you can just print out yourself, and it's pay what you want on itch.io with an option to give half of the proceeds to an environmentally focused charity. You can check out the website where it's kept and download the manual and player sheets. And I'll mention, I designed the manual and the player sheets in terms of the graphic design. It's really hellish. I had a lot of fun doing it, but also, it's pretty difficult. Probably won't do that again, but do have a look. Now though, I'm going to explain how the game is played. Now, first of all, you're going to need a player sheet. You can print one off, or you can just use a piece of paper and make some marks on it if you like, but you won't have funny little pictures of rats unless you've decided to draw your own. You'll also need a way to chat with and preferably see the people you're playing it with, whether that's via video conferences or a physical room. At least one player will need a pair of dice. I recommend just scavenging a couple of them from whatever games you've got knocking around in the cupboard. And finally, every player will need a pen and or pencil. And last but not least, you'll also need a fancy hat. Now, I've got a top hat here. If you do not have a top hat, then please do not commiserate about this now. We don't have time. You're going to have to cry yourself to sleep on your own time. Now, as I said, your rat's having a fabulous party aboard a sinking ship. So the most important thing to determine immediately is who's the host of this party initially, who's in charge, who's going to make sure everyone has a lovely time. Now, we recommend that the player who knows the game best starts the game as the host, and the host should put on their fancy hat, and everybody should applaud them, as is correct. This is the way I like to live my life. After you've selected a host, but before the game can begin, we have some very important admin to do. First of all, you have to fill in what your name is. What's the name of your rat who's been invited to this party? If you're playing with the optional vocation rules, then fill in the name of your vocation here. Otherwise, just give your rat a fictional job that you think sounds funny. And finally, the host has to give the ship a name. Once they've decided upon a name for the good ship that you're all aboard, everybody can write it on their sheet, and you can start to have a nice time. Not before this. Before this, you're not allowed to have a nice time. After you've decided who the host is going to be, when setting up the game, give that player the host's privilege. It is their party, after all, which means they start the game with one of each type of supplies. But everybody else gets a little something too. Every other player chooses one of the 6 types of supply and starts the game with 2 of them. If you're not sure what to choose in your first game, they're all pretty good. Just be random. Your host is then going to roll a pair of dice to determine the first banquet goal, which is going to be used within the game. Now, this is going to be an objective that's going to run throughout the game, each of which will score at the very end of the game, at which point you will have 5 different banquet goals activated out of this potential 11. Now, we rolled 10 here, which means we would circle grandiose, telling players that they need to try and construct the biggest single decoration at the party. Decorations, though, what are they? Oh, I don't know. Were you born on a boat? So listen, the vast majority of a game of rats is going to see you scavenging the ship, trying to find things that you can combine together to make wonderful things to make the party sing. And each turn you are going to be scavenging 3 times. The way this works is very simple. The host will roll the dice, or if the host doesn't have any dice, they will politely ask the player who does have dice to roll the dice for them. Manners are important when you're at a party, after all. And then after rolling the dice, you will be able to choose to take a variety of different resources based on what you roll. Down the side of your sheet, you will notice there is a different die face beside every different type of these 6 resources. And each player, using the same collective dice roll, will choose to take the type of one die face in the quantity of the second die face. So if we roll a 3 and a 5, I will be able to take 5 of number 3, which is straw, 5 little bits of straw, or 3 of number 5, 3 rags. And if you roll doubles while scavenging, everyone gets to choose whichever resource they like. So if you rolled 2 3s, you get 3 resources of any type. Each player would then mark their choice down on their sheet. The host would check with all other guests that they're ready to continue the party, at which point they could reply, "Carry on," or something equally appropriate, at which point the host would roll again and you would scavenge again. Each round you all scavenge a total of 3 times, again using the same 3 dice rolls, everyone making a choice from the same set of options, before moving on to what is my favourite part of any social occasion, seeing if you can outdo the host. One by one, the host is going to go down these different types of supply: cocktail swords, baubles, straw, crumbs, rags, and flowers. And they're going to inquire around the table if people have more than they do. So as the host, let's just say I might have 4 cocktail swords. So I would say, does anybody have more than 4 cocktail swords? And if you, as a rat at this party, do have more than 4, then you would say, yes, I do. And you would explain how many you have. Yes, I have 8, actually. If you do not have more than 4, including if you have the same amount, you do not have more. And therefore you will say, rats. I have 4 baubles. Rats. 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 I have 6. Fancy. If nobody has more of that type of supply than the host, then the host will spend all supplies that they currently have in that space and gain the reward that that type of supply offers. But if other players do have more than the host, then the host keeps their supplies, and anybody who has more, with the highest quantity going first, will each spend all of those resources and take that action one at a time. Now we'll go through what these actions do in just a moment, but the crucial thing is, if you do get to take an action, then you will get rid of all of that type of resource you've collected so far. If you don't get to take an action, you do not spend any of those resources and you carry them on to the next round. Well, hopefully you will be the person who has the most baubles in the boat. But why exactly would you want to be the person who has the most of any type of these resources? Well, that's because you get to do special fancy things. First but not least, we have cocktail swords. Any player who has more cocktail swords than the host, or if none do, then the host, get to choose any player and specifically request from them a number of a resource. Now, there are some major caveats with how this works. Firstly, you have to get the quantity right. If I hold you up with a tiny cocktail stick and say, would you be so kind as to hand over 15 of your crumbs, then first of all, I have to be polite about it. Come on, you might be mugging somebody blind at a party, but let's be reasonable and nice about it. After that, crucially, they don't have to give you anything unless they have at least that many of that type of resource. If I ask for 15 crumbs and you have 20, then hard luck, you're going to give me 15 crumbs. But if you've only got 14, then you simply say no. Oh, I'm terribly sorry, I don't have that many of that thing. And the other person can make whatever unhappy face they want to make. The second caveat here that's really important, you can't request cocktail swords or any supply someone else just took from a rat on this same turn. With the slightly fiddly but wonderfully dastardly horrible rule straight out of the way, we move on to baubles. Any players who beat the host or the host themselves will simply get rid of all of their baubles to gain 5 of any type of supply that they choose. Getting cozy now, straw allows you to build a nest, circling one of the nests next to any of the 6 types of supplies, and mean that any of that resource you gain in the future via a dice roll is doubled. So a 6 is suddenly a 12. It's pretty neat. Delicately popping onto crumbs, these simply allow you to cook a dish, crossing out all of the crumbs you currently have in your supply and adding a dish of that value into the dishes section of your sheet. Rags do the same thing but for decorations. Cross off the total value of the current quantity of rags you have and add a decoration of the same value into this area of the sheet. Dishes should look like numbers in a circle, where decorations should be numbers in cute little diamonds, so you can easily check them all and count them later in the game. And finally we have flowers. Now anybody here who outdoes the host is going to cross off the quantity of flowers they currently have and choose to either make a decoration or a dish of that value. But crucially, the player who has the most flowers that round, and there can only be one, gains the host's privilege and gets to become the host, putting on their fancy hat, at which point obviously everybody applauds. For the next round, they will gain the host's privilege of 1 of each supply, and they're in charge of the party. And at this point, it's important to remember that you carry over all the resources you still have left from the previous round. At the end of 5 rounds, you will have circled 5 different banquet goals, and if at any point a host rolls and lands on a number that's already been selected as a banquet goal, they get to choose whichever goal they want, which is a pretty tasty little bonus. And as a final reminder for how the flow works, each round you're going to scavenge 3 times, and that's 3 separate dice rolls that everybody makes a choice on based on the same 2 numbers. And then one by one you go through each of these different types of resource to see if players have outdone the host. Any rat that has more of a type of resource than the host gets to do something, otherwise the host gets to do something. Whenever anybody gets to do an action, they get rid of all of their resources of that type, otherwise they keep them. And finally, if no players have any of a type of resource, then nobody gets to take an action. After you've completed that final 5th round, your current host is going to take you through the banquet goals that have been selected throughout the game. And each player is going to fill in the little rosettes beneath these goals, depending on how well they've done in that category. The player or players who have most successfully achieved each goal are going to cross out all 3 of the rosettes, going home with 3 fantastic awards. Those who came second will get 2 rosettes, and then finally anybody who achieved anything towards that goal gets 1 rosette. You have to have done something towards it, but if you did do something, then congratulations. You literally did something, and that does mean something. Count up all of your rosettes, write them in a little total box, and then hey, the rat with the biggest number is the winner. And I've got some fabulous news for you. As the winner, you get a luxury life raft. In the event of a tie, the host decides which of the tied players is most deserving of the life raft. Finally though, the player who has the fewest awards at the end of the game flicks a coin to determine whether or not the ship sinks. And that's rats. Do check the manual for any specific questions or caveats, or just anything I might have forgotten or gotten slightly wrong, but that should be enough to get you going on your Faust boat party. Finally, from us at Team Shut Up and Sit Down and the designers of the game, Eric Zimmerman and Josh DeBonis, thank you so much for checking out the game, and we really hope that you enjoy it. A ton of love has gone into this project, and it is available on a pay-what-you-want basis. It's our little gift to the community, something to enjoy after a slightly rubbish year. But if you would like to support the project, then you can do so. And that's it. Grab yourself a fancy hat, stab your friends and family in the back, but most of all, do remember to do so with a level of respect and decorum. It's terribly important to be polite about such things. Ah, cocktail swords.